school and high school? There's a couple of you that raised your hands. During Sunday school, we have stuff for the youth group. Myself and 4 others are helping lead that. Right now we have more leaders than we have kids, but that's okay. So we'll put that little plug in there to come out to the youth group. So the last time I was here, I was involved in a special group. Pastor Brian was one of them. Andrew Calamaro, those of you who've been here long enough know Andrew Calamaro. Some of the teachers that have been around, Tony Kuhn and David Perry. Those of us, we would go play racquetball Mondays and Wednesdays. Every Monday and Wednesday for the whole time I was here, we'd go play racquetball. And has anybody played racquetball before? Right? Like, neither did I. When I got here, I had never played racquetball in my life. But we went and played racquetball. And you know what was neat about that? Was we got to share our lives with one another while we played racquetball. Now, did we make fun of each other as some of us were better than others, and when the ball would accidentally hit somebody in the back of the head, sometimes it was on purpose. Sorry, Brian. Yeah, but I had a close community that I was with then. So going back before that, long before that, before my military career, I was also part of a close-knit group at church. And it started out as like a Bible study on Wednesday nights, and it was couples. And we got too big to where we had to separate guys and girls. And we went through this book called The Dream Giver. Bruce Wilkinson wrote it. And the whole story about this book, it's kind of like Pilgrim's Progress. So it's kind of fictional. It had a story of a guy named Ordinary, just like you and me, just ordinary people from a land of familiar where we like to be. We're happy with where we're at. Guy named Ordinary from the land of familiar. And the book talks about how God gives us our dreams for a purpose. So at that point in time, I was happily married, then only 2 kids. Life was good. We were involved in the church, also helping lead the youth group. I was progressing at work. And Jen and I just felt like that there's something more out there for us to do. There's something more. And so we were going through this book. The dream I had in my life at the time was I wanted to be in the military. That was kind of a far-fetched thing. I was 26 years old, married, in a career already as an automotive mechanic. But that was my dream. And so here we are 14 years later, and I'm very happy to be a crew chief in the Air Force. I've worked 7 years on F-16s, 5 years on A-10s, and I'm currently working on the U-2. We're going to talk more about that later. So those groups that we're a part of, we've always longed to be a part of a group like that. You can't just come to church and sit in the pews or sit in the chairs on a Sunday morning and have that kind of a connection. So that group that I shared about where we went through the book, and it was just guys in there, we all shared our dreams with one another. And I shared I wanted to be in the military. They all laughed, thought it was funny. One guy shared, and this still blows my mind, that God created somebody that wanted to be a landlord. I don't know if that's ever a career that you guys thought you would, yep, I want to be a landlord. This gentleman wanted to be a landlord. Jeff and I are still friends today. In fact, we were messaging this week. And he became a landlord. There was another gentleman, Tom. He wanted to go on the mission field, and he became a missionary. And since then, so that was 14 years ago, he went on the mission field, came back, and now he's a pastor at a church. God gave us the dreams for a reason, and he gave us the people in this church to help influence us in those dreams. So, life is very complex. There's so many stressors that we have in life. Some of us are married, and it's easy to confide in our wives or our spouses, but we need more than that. The holidays are coming, right? So it's mid-October. People are going to start thinking about being lonely in the holidays. There's a lot of people here that are by themselves. Life is complex. We need each other to get through some of those complex times. Besides the holidays and all the stress that can go on with that, There's just the normal stresses of life. A good friend of mine here at Osan, he had a lot of life stress, and he told it, you know what I'm talking about when you can see the stress on someone's face, and he didn't want to talk about it. So for 3 weeks, hey man, we need to go to lunch. Hey, we need to get together. We need to talk. And come to find out, man, he was in a position at work where he was about to get demoted, and he didn't even know what he was doing wrong. And so that's stuff that we need to share with each other at church. Like, who more important do we need to share that with, to pray with, and to go through with than the people that are in this room? That's important. So we see this idea of going through life, the Air Force would call it with your wingman, or going through a struggle in more than just Christianity. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Any Marvel fans in here? Yeah. So the movie Age of Ultron, right? So the Avengers steal the scepter. Nice smile, Becca. The Avengers steal the scepter back that was from the first Avenger movie, and Ultron was created by Dr. Banner and Tony Stark. And so now there's this huge threat. And the rest of the Avengers are confronting Tony Stark about why did you do this? Why didn't you confront us on this? And Tony had a very lame excuse, and Captain America simply said, when there's a big threat that comes against us, we need to fight it together. There's a togetherness that's required. You have to do things together. So like I said earlier, I'm a crew chief. I fix planes, put gas in it, kick the tires, add oil every now and then. There's obviously a lot more to it than just that. But whenever there's an issue, like maybe a time crunch, we need to get a jet fixed. We need to get it fixed like right now. And hey, we've got all these guys sitting over here in the corner, like an avionics guy, that maybe he doesn't have any work to do right now. Hey, we need help. So we'll send everybody to that one jet to work and fix that one jet at the same time, because we need that accountability. Even if all they can do is hand us a wrench, it's still, that saves 30 seconds, and it's still an extra person that's there. So what hinders us from being a close community at church? What's stopping us from opening up to the other people that are around us? We're afraid. We don't want to, what are they going to think about? What are they going to think about our dreams? What are they going to think about our failures? So God has something to say about that. 2 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us not the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. There's another thing that hinders us. I think this one's a big one, is our time. It takes a lot of time to get mentored. It takes a lot of time to mentor someone else. It takes a lot of time. Like I said, I'm a parent of 3. I probably spend 3 to 8 hours a week on the phone with the kids, which is not normal for somebody that's 40 years old. That's normally a teenage thing. But what time do we have to invest in someone else? And you have to make it. So for me, that means I pretty much don't sleep. My wife asks me sometimes when I'm going to sleep, and that'll happen when I'm dead is usually my answer. But we have to invest our time. We have to be conscious about it. We have to, hey, if our buddy's struggling and all he's available is for breakfast at 6 a.m., we have to make the time to have breakfast at 6 a.m. And that's hard. That's not an easy thing to want to do, but we have to make those conscious decisions. So the third thing that hinders us from investing in the people around us is how is it going to benefit us? Right? So if I put myself out there and I make myself vulnerable to the people around me, how is that really going to benefit me? So personally, I have not opened up to somebody and not felt God's blessing come back from it, ever. Now, saying that we're all human, right? So you get involved in a small group and you open yourself up, they're human. At some point, they're going to disappoint you. They're going to let you down. They're going to do something that's going to make you feel like that maybe you shouldn't be a part of this group. And like I was saying to somebody else, that like there's been people in this building that have disappointed me. And you know what? That's okay, because sometimes that's when you grow closer to one another. And through forgiveness and working through those situations is when intimacy actually happens, and you get to grow closer to God because of what those situations were about. James 5:16, therefore confess your sins one to another and pray for one another that you will be healed. I didn't put this in the manuscript. I really felt God this morning wanted me to share this story. So 2015, I'm going to get emotional. 2015, I was deployed to Interleague. Normal deployment, left the family at home. The week that I got there, my son had horrible migraines. So he would stay in his room, blackout curtains, and under the covers, and ask Jen to keep the lights off. That was very hard. So deployed, didn't have anybody with me that I knew was a Christian at the time. And it was a few weeks later, there was somebody in our church at home. He was a chiropractor. And he said, that it could be his back's out of alignment. Why don't you bring him over to my business? We won't charge you. And I'll align his back, and maybe that'll help his migraines. Everything the neurologist did didn't really help. We ended up getting a second opinion and the second neurologist, and he's on a lot of medication. But it wasn't until that moment where somebody in the church stepped up and said, hey, why don't you come on, bring him over here. God's got this. And it was at that moment that I realized, on the other side of the world, that God's got this. You don't have to worry about it. And that changed everything for me. So, I know this wasn't a very long message. We could probably go ahead and have the music team coming up. But here's the point, is that we are all here for one another. And it's those opportunities that we need to have to bless each other. For me, in that deployment, it was Ken stepping out of his comfort zone and saying, hey, bring your son over here. And whether that helped or not, that's what I needed when I was deployed. I needed to know that there was somebody in the church ready to step up. So, Pastor Brian suggested a few months ago not to run away after the service, to hang out, to fellowship. I would say even, you know what? Well, a lot of you guys have young kids. Go get your kids and we'll bring them in here and let them run amok. It'll be okay. There's people here that they don't just want to connect. Man, we need to connect with each other. And he also suggested going out to lunch after church. That's all great. Man, it's a long week. Get together during the week. We need that encouragement in the middle of the week. God's blessed me in being here. It's been coming back to this church for the second time, or to Osan. I got the orders to come to Osan, and it was not shocking at all. It was exciting. I get to come back to Mission Baptist Church. And was that kind of an awkward feeling of separating from the family and coming back to where I knew was home? This place has really been a second home to me. So let's make it home. Let's make it a safe place where we can talk to one another and encourage one another in Christ.